Hello, how's everyone doing? This is Lemon Lattice, and today we are going to be going over Fusion 360, an introduction to it, so that you can learn to turn things like this, which is a mesh file exported from meshmixer, into things like this, which is a fully completed socket ready for a Bulldog 3 Gen A lock. This is a workflow I'll be putting out soon. These are all adjustable struts. You can change the length. You can make them longer or shorter based on your socket. You can put your cut hole medial, lateral, left, right, depending on your socket, whatever you want. It comes with holes cut in already. And you basically take this right off the printer, trim up your edges, and you're done. So this is about a 10-minute workflow from meshmixer through Fusion 360 and into your slicer and onto your printer. So this is an optimized workflow. It's a very robust distal end. It takes about two to 3 hours probably to print, depending on your socket size. And this is a tool I'll be putting out. It'll be a $50 tool. And by learning to use Fusion 360, you'll be able to buy that one time and use it forever. So there's other things you can do with Fusion 360. You can do things like make a distal end 4-hole. This is another tool I'm working on and I'll be putting out. I make calibration shapes for testing new materials. And you can just make other stuff like this is a heat gun holster I made that screws onto a workbench. Parts for 3D printers. A nozzle holder. And then other O&P things like a Lin valve dummy. Or you can make things that are just a little bit more one-off. So this was a lock for a 3R80 release where I flipped the levers around, imported scaled pictures, and created this lock release lever from it that goes on the anterior of the knee. Or you just do other projects. This is a potato box I made. And things like a bookmark with recessed cutouts. So Fusion 360 is very powerful. That gives you a quick idea of all the types of things you can do. And this and meshmixer are both owned by Autodesk. And Autodesk is slowly bringing the tools from meshmixer into Fusion 360. You can see this whole mesh workflow here. And where this used to be a multi-step process to take this, let's show you the wireframe here. To take this triangle mesh that comes out of Fusion 360 or comes out of meshmixer and to turn that into a solid body, which is the Fusion 360 type of workflow where you can have dimensioned parts that are parametric, meaning you can go back and change them. They're not organic shapes necessarily, but you can take the organic shapes you've now created in meshmixer and very quickly turn these into solid bodies now, where this used to take several steps back and forth and could take a little while depending on your computer, the processing power. This now happens pretty quickly, and that's now a solid body that we can work on and extrude shapes up to meet that very cleanly. You can see on something like this, you can see how clean these transitions are. There's no rounded off corners, which is what tends to happen in meshmixer, is when you attach shapes, you'll get rounded off corners. When you do those things, they're called Boolean operations, anything where you're joining or cutting or subtracting shapes from each other. In meshmixer, that can be a little sloppy, and in Fusion 360, that's a very clean process. So you can see how clean the transition from our socket to our lock is, and that is the benefit of Fusion 360. So let me jump over here. I'll show you their website real quick. This will give you an idea of how it works and what it does. So Fusion 360 is parametric true dimensioned CAD modeling. So it's made from mechanical parts, and in O&P, that's going to be things like locks and valves and dummies and joints, or just connecting up. Maybe you can mock up pylons and pyramids like Arthur does over with his content at O&P Digital Designer. So there's a lot of ways to use this. You can use it for very simple things, or you can use it for very complex things. But you can see the price here, $495 annually, is very, very reasonable for a software this powerful. And the great thing about Fusion is it has these extensions. So if you wanted to try out other features, you can do that. They have things like generative design, which is where you tell it a couple parameters. Maybe you want a connection point at this location and that location, and you want to bridge those the strongest, most efficient way. You can use cloud computing to give you ideas on how to do that. So that would be their generative design extension. The product design has things like volumetric latticing, which is very similar to the tool sets in something like Entopology, where you can actually make a cushioning lattice. And when you're in Fusion 360, those are up here at the top, extensions. And when you get a subscription, you're going to get 100 credits that you can use. You can see I've got 96. I used 4 of them to do this volumetric latticing tool for a 24-hour period. So if you just have one project to do or you want to test it out, you can try that. And then you can add these different things on as you want to. So Fusion 360 has a hobby version. So if you're just learning it, you're just trying to figure this out at home on your own, I believe it's free to use still as a hobby version. There are student licenses. And then if you're doing this in a production mode or as a business, you can get that $495 annual. Now, I also have a 20% off discount code. That's going to be in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the video description. If you're seeing this on LinkedIn, it'll be in the post or in the comments. And that is also going to give me a little bit of a kickback, which is how I help run my website and my channel, how I buy new materials to test things, and how I keep putting out these videos for everybody. So if you're going to buy Fusion 360, I'd really appreciate you using that link and getting myself that referral bonus and you 20% off at the same time. So let's go ahead. You would open a new window. I'm going to close some of these. And then I'll show you just real quick how to navigate through Fusion 360 and how to work some of these tools. Let's keep that open. We'll keep that. So things like this they might look complicated, but they're actually pretty simple because it's a lot of just 2D sketches. And you take 2D sketches and you make them 3D shapes. So there's really not much to it. This one's got a little more. You can see at the bottom, this is that parametric history tree. And you can always go back in time. You can roll things back steps. And you can always go in and change individually any of these little tools. So that's an extrusion, that's a sketch. You can go in and individually edit and change any of these. And that's how a workflow like this can be edited for each individual socket. Is you just go back some steps, you find the sketch that relates to these struts, and you change the length of that. So let's open a new window. So the plus sign there. And then within Fusion 360, everything's cloud-based. You can see up there the 9 squares. That's going to open up sort of your file library. You can always double click things and it'll open them. You can also insert them into a new design so you can link designs up to each other. But if you're just starting fresh, this is going to look somewhat similar to meshmixer. You've got your view box up here on the top right. So home, front, right, top. You can click all those just like in meshmixer. You can use the 3D connection space mouse with this, which works great. Down at the bottom are going to be some different tools for different views and things. And you'll just have to figure this out. So Autodesk has a lot of videos that you can watch to learn more. You can check in with Arthur. He's got his course coming out on Fusion 360 that'll teach you kind of all the steps start to finish. I'm basically going to focus on just some of the things that might be useful for very basic O&P modeling, how to make sockets or how to do other things. And then over time, we will teach more and more. So we're going to start here. This top bar is going to be solids, surface, mesh, sheet metal, etc. I pretty much use solids and meshes. And when you're in the solid, you can click this here, create sketch. And that's going to pull up. Let's go home view. That's going to pull up the origin. Now, even when you're not in this, you could click here. The eyeball is going to turn origin on and off. But after you do create sketch, you're going to just click the plane that you want that sketch to be on. So let's go from top down. And then you're just going to start sketching out shapes. So you can do lines, rectangles, circles, splines. You can mirror things. If you drop this down, that's kind of your quick menu. You can drop down the arrows and find more. So let's do a rectangle. We're going to snap to the center. If you drag off of that, you're going to follow the line, the axis. But this is going to be a 2-point rectangle. So you click once, you click twice, and you've created it. And then you can see as you do that, you have the option to put in dimensions right there. So let's type 4. Tab, we'll go to the next one. Let's call that 6 and hit enter. So you can put in your dimensions right there as you're going. Or you can do this and click this dimension tool. And you can see right there, the hotkey popped up right below it in parentheses D. So you could always click D and do dimensions there. So hit escape to get out of that tool. I'm going to turn the origin view off. Drop down that arrow and you'll see this is your history tree of your sketch. So let's start with just that. You can see these are able to be hovered over and they turn a shaded color. That means they are a fully enclosed shape with no opens, no open spaces on your lines anywhere. Let's finish sketch. And then you can click these outside of that sketch and you can see down at the bottom, now we have a history that you've made one sketch. It's also here. You can turn it on and off. You could right click and edit from there. You could also right click and edit from up here. So to turn these 2D drawings into 3D shapes, there's 2 ways to do it. One is you click it and highlight first, and then you click your tool. Let's do the extrude tool. And you can just drag this up and then type in your distance. You could drag it down and that'd be a negative distance. You could come over here and type it there. And then you can also choose different things. Like you might want this to be 2-sided. Maybe you want to go 2 millimeters one way and 5 millimeters the other. Now, once you finish that, you've got what has become a body. So bodies are solid tools. If we click back over to this mesh, let me roll this back in time through the history. And you can see the different icon here, how that's a wireframe. So that's a mesh body that as you convert it, it has now become a solid body, just like we have here. So that's a solid body. So once you do that, your sketch is going to turn off. If you want to work on it again, you can click it again. And let's say we want to now extrude this one. And we're going to go up. Let's call it 3. And this is where once you have connecting shapes like this, you have to be careful about what your operation is. So over on the right in this toolbox, you can do join, cut, intersect, new body, or new component. Generally, you're going to be doing a join, a cut, or a new body probably. Intersect could be useful depending on your project. And new components probably a little more advanced. I usually work with bodies. I only make components when I need to as parts of like an assembly. But for most of what we're doing, I don't need components. So let's first call that a new body. Hit OK. And now you can see we have 2 independently selectable bodies. If we go back and edit that feature, we could say join. And now that is all one piece. It's joined those two shapes into one body. So the next thing we could do is create another sketch. And now that we have these bodies, you don't have to just sketch on a plane. You could start selecting any of these faces to sketch on. So let's go here and let's create a circle. Before we do that, I want to show you one other thing. Let's go project and click that and then hit OK. And now you can see that has projected that shape onto this sketch. So that makes those edges selectable. Now that is on the same plane. You can also do that for something that's in a different plane. So we could project this on as well, even though that's on a different plane. We now know exactly where that is in space. So let's go here. You can hover over and it will snap to your center points. And then you could drag in, and when you hit the other center point, you can see it pops up that line. So now we have a hole right at the center. Hit escape. Let's dimension that hole and say it's 1.5 millimeters. And now we could do things like selecting that, extruding, and let's do a cut. You could cut that back a certain distance, or you could edit that and cut all is going to take it through the back. It's going to go everything within that plane, even if there were shapes hanging out back here behind it. You could go to object and you could select a plane. So if we select this face or this edge, it's going to go to that. If we click that and delete that selection, and let's say we go to this one, it's going to cut to that. So very powerful software, lots of ways to use it. And you don't have to have a sketch. Anything that's a selectable shape can be used. So you could just grab that face and extrude right there. You don't actually have to create a sketch as long as there's already some geometry that can be highlighted, basically. So that's a quick introduction on how Fusion 360 works, some of the tools. Couple other things to note here. We had talked about Booleans. That's going to be things like your cuts, your joins, your combines. There's this one. Combine is going to be similar. You can have joins and cuts. So this is when you already have multiple shapes. So let's say we went back to this one, and instead of joining, we did that as a body. So we've got that. The cut remains into that as a single body because that has not been edited. But now these are, once again, two separate bodies. You could do something like combine these, select both, and join them. And now they are one again. So that's another way to get to that. And then pay attention to which one you select as your body and your target and your tool. So let's say that's the target. That's the tool. You could say keep tools. And now you've got one body that is all of it. And you kept the tool, which was that one. So very powerful. Lots of options within Fusion 360. If you're going to be doing any sort of O&P modeling, past just very basic socket designs or maybe orthoses designs, anything beyond organic shaping, I think it's very valuable to invest some time in learning Fusion 360, either with that hobby version or if you're using it as a company, just go ahead and buy that license. When it's time to renew after a year, you can usually find Fusion 360 on sale. So I don't think I've ever actually paid $500 for it. So just look out for those. Sometimes you just re-up your license a little bit early, but lots of stuff you can do here. And over time, they're going to keep bringing these mesh tools in. So that's something that's going to be very valuable to us. Is at some point down the line, we might be able to do all of our work in Fusion 360 and have everything housed here, depending on how much of that meshmixer stuff they bring in, because they have kind of done a sunset on meshmixer. There's no more advancements being made to it. It is what it is, and they're not going to change any of it anymore because they're really focusing on those tools here. And then Fusion 360 also has a slicer. So 3D printing could also be handled from Fusion 360. It already can, and then I haven't used that yet, but I need to learn that. So check these out. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to start doing some tools and some tool development videos specifically for the Bulldog 3 Gen A lock coming up as part of the transtibial locking sockets series. So that'll be part 2 of it. That'll be the next thing I do here. But I wanted to give you the overview and teach you a little bit about Fusion 360 first. So let me know if there's questions, and have a great day.